Hello everyone and welcome to a new In the Mail, the series that will touch both your passion for electronics and your bank account at the same time. We're gonna start with a pair of shoe insoles heaters, and these might seem familiar if you've seen Voltlog 135, where I built a heated seat pad. There I used similar pads that worked with 5 volts, but these ones are different because they are built different. These showed some wires in the product listing pictures, but I didn't get any wires with mine. But that's okay because we all know the quality of those cables is very bad. So these use a metal foil construction. They are rated for 5 volts and I'm gonna have to test them for current and for temperature to make sure they are safe to use. You certainly don't want to get any burns. That would be very bad. So let's hook this up to 5 volts from my bench power supply and see how much current they pull. So I'm seeing 680 milliamps. The current seems to be going down, but that is to be expected because the metal foil inside these is heating up and it's changing its resistance. So that's really not bad though. 600-700 milliamps at 5 volts. Considering a power bank with just a single lithium-ion cell, it could give you at least 1 hour of usage out of these if you use them continuously. And I'm talking like a bad 18650 cell which only has, let's say, 1500 milliamp hours of capacity. But if you use a good capacity one with up to 3000 milliamp hours, then you would get 2 hours of continuous usage. I can feel this getting warm. It's not too hot, but like I said, I'll have to check this with a thermocouple or maybe with the thermal camera and see what kind of temperature it reaches to make sure it's safe for usage. I don't see how you would be using these while walking. I think they're going to be a bit uncomfortable while walking, but for those that just stand in a single place for extended periods of time, they might work fine. This video is sponsored by JLC PCB, a professional manufacturer of printed circuit boards. Their website is modern and has convenient features like easy-to-use order form with built-in Gerber viewer, production process tracking, package tracking, and single button reorder for previous orders without having to upload Gerber files again. Next up, I have a bunch of these small DC to DC converter modules. These are based on the MP1584, which is a 28 volt input, 3 amps, 1.5 megahertz capable chip. The wide input range is particularly interesting because you can get other compact DC to DC converters, but with a smaller input range, like 15 volts. But these ones should be okay up to 28 volts, but only if they used properly rated caps on the input of these. So to go up to 28 volts, you would want at least a 35 volts rated cap, and I'm not sure they've done that from the Chinese factory. So if you plan to using these with a higher input voltage, I would recommend changing the input cap and replacing it with a known one which has at least 35 volts of rated voltage and about 10 microfarads. Otherwise the cap could fail because it's not rated for the voltage, and even before failing it will actually show up as a lower capacitance as the voltage goes up, so it will not filter that line as required. Other than that, these should be pretty good for using any projects where you might need a step-down converter, and they are incredibly cheap. You will find links for a pack of 5 of these in the description below. Next up, I have an item that I will be using for an RC airplane, but I thought I'd show it here because it might be interesting for other uses as well. It's a so-called power distribution board with 5 volt and 12 volt DC to DC converters on board. This is better than most stuff you'll find on eBay because it has a 2 ounce copper thickness on a 4-layer PCB to ensure very low resistance path for carrying a lot of current through the internal tracks. These DC to DC converters will have properly rated capacitors because this can take up to 6S battery input, and that means up to 25 volts at its input. This module will basically split the input power to a bunch of different pads located on the sides and on both sides of this PCB, and it will do the same for the 12 volt and 5 volt rail. It will split those two different available pads to which you can easily solder. And if you need a slightly different voltage, just search for the DC to DC converter chip datasheet, which is probably the same MP1584 shown earlier, and you can easily adjust the feedback network resistors to obtain a slightly different voltage at the output. So I've had projects in the past where I needed something like this, two rails powering multiple subsystems in an enclosure, and it would have been nice to have something like this ready-made back then, instead of having to design my own PCB to split that rail to different pin headers or pads. So it's much easier to use something like this. My next item is a digital tachometer, and no, it doesn't allow you to measure tachos, but instead it's an instrument that measures rotation speed. I've had a few occasions where I needed to measure the rotation speed, so it involved motors, and unless you have some Hall sensors on the motor to measure, then you need to measure it externally, and this is a quick way of doing that. Now, this is a very cheap instrument, so I'm not sure what the accuracy will be. I mean, yeah, they show this aircraft engine on the package, but really, if aircraft engine manufacturers would be using instruments from this class, I think our lives would be in danger whenever we would fly with those planes. But for my purpose, if it's a couple of RPM out, it doesn't really matter. The way this works is by shining a laser beam at the object you want to measure. Then on the object itself, let's say you're measuring a flywheel, you will need to place a reflective marker, and they give you a few stickers in here that you can use for that purpose. And then each time the object rotates and the reflective marker passes in front of the laser beam, it will reflect that back to the instrument. It has here a way of detecting that, and it will count that as one rotation. So as you can imagine, this is pretty easy and fast to use, rather than implementing some Hall sensors on the motor and reading those with the microcontroller. So here is how the instrument looks. It even has a temperature measurement. I didn't think I would need that for measuring the rotation, but hey, it's there. So there are different models of digital tachometers on eBay. They are pretty similarly priced, and I would assume they have pretty similar performance as well. But you should pick the one that has the easiest to read display. As usual, search for a link to this in the description below, and you will find exactly this model. Next up, a simple but very useful pedal switch. So it's for those situations where you might have both hands occupied and you need to trigger a switch. I remember about 6 or 7 years ago I wanted to purchase one of these, and it was like $30 to order one delivered from China. And I quickly ditched the idea for that project, but recently these are incredibly cheap. I got this one delivered for under $2. And I deal with this kind of stuff every day, but I still find it incredible. It has 3 wires in here, and there is a small diagram on the back. You basically get one normally connected and one normally opened contact. And I have one of those projects coming up where I need a pedal switch, so that's why I ordered one. There will be a link to this in the description below. Next item is pretty interesting. This is a Qi compatible wireless charging module, and it's rated for 10 watts. And what seemed interesting was the fact that it uses 2 coils. I didn't know there are chargers which use more than 1 coil for the power transfer, but now after doing some reading on the subject, I found this app note from NXP that clearly indicates the situations where you would want to use more than 1 coil. So you can have several coils, and then the smart chip will select the best one for charging depending on the position of the device over the coils. Or it could also be a case where the smart chip will deliver power to multiple coils at the same time to increase the efficiency of the transfer. And then you can also have more advanced systems where you could basically charge two devices at the same time, and then the smart chip will detect the position of the devices over the different coils, and it will activate a separate coil for each device. So I'll link that app note in the description below if you'd like to take a look. It's not very long, but it gives some pretty interesting info on these systems. The module I have here doesn't seem to be using a dedicated wireless charging controller, but rather an STM8S microcontroller, a lot of software, and a bunch of transistors and passives in the power path. As you can see, the module is pretty slim, so you could easily build something like this into your own wireless charging station, into something like a nightstand, or maybe even in your car. And there are even modules with 3 coils that you can get on AliExpress. So take a look at the links in the description below. You'll find several different modules. Next up, still in the wireless charging territory, I have a finished product. It's a wireless charging car mount. It's 10 watts rated and it's quick charge compatible. So it takes a 9 volt input if the supplying charger can provide that. It's one of these funky new designs which grabs the phone through the weight of the phone as you insert it in the clamp, and at the same time it has the wireless charging pad on the back, so your phone charges whenever you place it in the charger. And I must say I have several Baseus products, mostly micro USB and lightning cables, and they are pretty good quality. I'm pretty happy with them, so that's why when I had to choose this charger I went for the Baseus name. I'm not sure if they manufacture their own stuff or if they just rebrand from other factories, but they have a more premium feel, which I like, so that's why I went for this brand name, because you can definitely find this charger under a different name as well, maybe even cheaper, but since I've had positive experience with this brand, I went with them for this charger. So this is the type of charger that clamps onto the car vent slots, but there are people, including myself, which don't really like using this kind of clamps on the car ventilation slots because it can damage the vent slots. But the system uses this type of clamp with a articulated ball type joint, and I think I can adapt this to use previous windshield clamp that I already have, and uses the same type of connection system. Next up, I got one of these Air Mouse wireless remotes, and I have used these before on devices that included something like this. I've used these on Samsung smart TVs and they worked okay, but I didn't know how these cheap replicas would work. So I ordered one, but it turns out it works pretty nice. I've tested this one and it's pretty useful for controlling your PC wirelessly. You may have a media PC connected to your TV, or you may occasionally connect your laptop via HDMI to play a movie on a TV. So one of these remotes with its compact receiver will help you control stuff from your couch. And like I mentioned, I had this connected for a few hours and it worked just fine. I really like it. I have the module which includes the gyro, and it was about $10 delivered. I guess if you get the model without the gyro, you lose the Air Mouse capability. So if you want that option, you need to get the gyro model. What's even more interesting is that it has this IR learning mode, where it can learn the IR code from your standard TV remote, and then it can control your TV as well. The manual made a reference to the on-off function, so I'm not sure if it's restricted to that function, or maybe you can control other things like the channel or volume. but I was still surprised to see that it has an IR receiver emitter. So I'm pretty happy with this purchase. I like how it works. I like the build quality. So if you're looking for something like this, I can recommend this model. It's pretty good value for money. And the last item in today's video, I thought I'd try the AliExpress Amtech Flux one more time to see if anything has changed. So we all know the flux we get from eBay or AliExpress, which is labeled Amtech, and this is in fact fake flux. That this is not Amtech Flux. It doesn't have the same properties as the genuine stuff. And if you've used the genuine Amtech 559, you know it has a lighter color. It smells nice when it burns. It's kind of a pine smell. It doesn't turn brown when heated, and more importantly, it just works better when soldering. So recently I came across this seller on AliExpress that said 100% original Amtech Flux in his listing, so I thought I'd give it a try. So this is what I received for $5. I certainly paid double or more than what I would usually pay for the fake eBay stuff. So the first difference I noticed is that they give you a plunger, well, two in my case, and a needle, and the packaging is certainly different to what I've previously had. So it says here that it's manufactured in August 2018, so that's pretty recent. But they also make this reference to jiangsolder.com, and there's a white space in the URL. So that doesn't look too good. But if we do a Google search for that, the website actually exists, and it offers you like a box where you can enter this serial number and check if your flux is genuine. But it certainly looks like a website, a scam website designed specifically for this, and I don't really understand why they went to the effort of doing this, because I've been reading that genuine Amtech Flux does not have individual serial numbers on the syringe, and I don't think Amtech would really advertise themselves through a website like this. So yeah, I don't think, because Amtech, from what I know, they don't make their flux in China. They make it in the US. So yeah, this doesn't sound right from the information we have so far. But anyway, let's put it to a quick test and see how it behaves when compared to the old fake stuff, and also how it compares to some genuine Amtech Flux that I have here in this syringe. So I have applied some flux. To the left we have the fake eBay stuff. In the middle we have the new AliExpress 100% original stuff. And to the right we have the genuine Amtech Flux. Now I'm gonna add some solder and melt on those pads, and we'll check the end result. So here are the results. The fake eBay stuff turned a bit brown, but you can still solder with it. It's just not as nice. It doesn't flow, the solder doesn't flow as nice, and also the smell is really bad. This is the stuff I got from AliExpress, and it's a bit more lighter in color. It worked okay for soldering. It had a really nice consistency. It was easy to push it through the needle, but unfortunately it smells just as bad as the previous fake stuff I got from eBay. And here is the genuine Amtech stuff. We can see the residue is almost clear and can be left on the PCB without any issues, and the smell is this nice pine smell, nothing as bad as the other two. So even though the seller claims this stuff is 100% original, I'm pretty sure it's 100% fake because Amtech genuine packaging would not look like this. And even though it's usable, it's not as nice as the original Amtech stuff, and they shouldn't say it's 100% original because that's tricking people into buying this stuff thinking it's original when really it's not. So I'm not saying it's bad flux, you can still use it, but it's just not as good as the genuine Amtech stuff. And if you can get the genuine stuff, please get that one, it's better. If not, you can use some of this cheaper stuff, but don't expect the same level of quality. Thank you for watching. That was all for today. Let me know in the comment section if you found something interesting. Send me some feedback by clicking the thumbs up or thumbs down button on the video, and I will see you next week.